The wildfire situation and the water issues that had something to do with it.
As thousands of homes started to burn across Los Angeles on January 7th, fire hydrants began to run dry.
This area is known for having fire issues.
Isn't she in?
So
Pretty
you
sure
would
she was in the
think
other video,
that
right?
they would be prepared for this.
The rapid spread, fueled by winds up to 100 miles per hour, was happening too quickly for water pumps to keep up. It shocked the system and those fleeing the flames.
You start loading your car thinking this could happen, but you're going, oh, I'll be back.
Eventually, the LA fires killed at least 28 people and burned more than 16,000 buildings to the ground. 3 of those lost in the Palisades fire belonged to Joan Zoloth and her family.
My parents scraped together to buy that home when I was 6 years old.
Wow.
They bought it with my 2 aunts. My mother was a teacher. What people don't realize is how much Malibu is filled with those types of people, not just movie stars.
In August, she bought here, what used to be a 100-year-old house around the corner from the home where she grew up. Her son owned another home nearby, both gone. Zoloth, like many others, has questions about why the water system 6 miles east in the Pacific Palisades wasn't able to stop the spread.
If that happened in the Palisades, how far did that water situation go? Like, was there enough water to fight these fires in Malibu?
Any domestic water supply is really made for turning a faucet on and brushing your teeth, perhaps a couple structure fires. It's going to handle that fine. But when you have so many homes that are on fire, all of those different fire engines and firefighters that are pouring copious amounts of water at the same time depletes the tanks of water.
From a 117 million gallon reservoir that was emptied almost a year ago, to the protection of a small endangered fish that did not impact water supply,
These
big
are the
questions
issues.
and lots of misinformation are swirling.
The kinds of fires that we've seen in Los Angeles are so large, it's hard to imagine that they wouldn't overwhelm the water system in any city, in any urban area.
And it's not just California. As many as 1 in 6 Americans now live in areas with significant wildfire risk.
The hydrants would have run dry anywhere in the world with a fire event like this in the topography where this occurred.
We went to the area devastated by the Palisades fire to see the wreckage firsthand and ask fire officials and water experts how something like this could happen and what other cities can do to keep it from happening
This
there.
has got to be rough to see, right? Coming back to it if you live there. That's got to be rough. Some people grieve differently, so.
As firefighters battled in the Palisades, it wasn't that they used up all of LA's water supply. They simply couldn't get water where they needed it fast enough to put out so many fires at once.
Because we've had a couple of wet years. Southern California reservoirs had plenty of water, so it wasn't an absolute scarcity of water that we saw. What it was a collapse of part of the urban water system. People leave water on in their homes when they leave their sprinklers and their hoses on in hopes of saving property. Fires burn down houses and that destroys pipes. It was a tragedy, but it's not entirely a surprise.
To understand what went wrong with the hydrants, it's important to understand how municipal water systems work. LA gets most of its water from 3 major sources hundreds of miles away: the Owens Valley, the Colorado River, and from Northern California via the State Water Project. LA relies on some local water too, like groundwater and stormwater and wastewater that it treats and uses to replenish the groundwater. All those sources feed water into several holding locations: above-ground tanks and water towers, underground basins, and most significantly, reservoirs. In LA, those feed a lattice of pipelines that crisscross the city. In Pacific Palisades, homes and hydrants draw water from a couple places. Some of them tap directly into main lines. Those mains also carry water to reservoirs, one of which was closed for repairs, and onward to 3 1-million-gallon holding tanks uphill. Those tanks are the other way Pacific Palisades homes get water. Pump stations force water up to those 3 tanks, then gravity is used to get the water and water pressure to the homes and hydrants below. And while details will be under investigation for a long time, what we do know happened on January 7th is that pumps were unable to refill these tanks uphill faster than the water was being used by the dozens of hydrants being tapped by firefighters below.
Do you so it's basically because they were trying to use more than what the reservoir or the this place could handle, right, to refill it, that they were just like using, and this place and things like that, they're like, well, we can't pump anymore, but we're trying to. Wow.
Crews trying to install pressure regulation devices at the first tank to reach critically low levels were forced to leave as the fire got too close. As levels in all 3 tanks dropped, pressure in the hydrants fell, and the whole water system flow was weakened, like a straw pricked with holes.
If you're holding a cup of water and you normally drink out of it with 1 straw, that's the normal use. Well, all of a sudden, if you put 25 straws into that water or that tank, it gets depleted so fast that it can't be refilled quick enough, and it's even more of a challenge at higher elevation where you have to suck or push that water up to those areas.
California Governor Gavin Newsom and LA City Council members have called for an investigation into why the Santa Ynez Reservoir hadn't yet reopened after being drained almost a year ago to repair a tear in its cover, which keeps out debris to maintain water quality.
That would have made a difference, but even by all accounts, if that reservoir was full, it wouldn't have stopped the fire.
The investigation will also look into what happened with the hydrants.
Hydrants drying up during conflagrations is not new. That's been going on forever, and they're designed for fighting a fire, or maybe 2 fires, but not 100 fires all at once.
That's why fire is
Yeah, they got
also
hit
fought
by
from
10
the
different
air.
fires already.
Super scoopers can skim off 1,500 gallons from reservoirs.
When I say 10 different fires, I mean from like 10 fires that are named differently. So like you got the Palisades, you got the there was one further east, and so different named fires.
Or the ocean, although saltwater corrodes equipment, causing its own issues. Helicopters dip into sources as small as streams or backyard pools. Air tankers drop retardant ahead of the fire to slow the spread.
We have over 60 firefighting helicopters and even more when you add the air tankers as well.
But high winds grounded aircraft for several hours on that first night of the Palisades fire.
When we have significant Santa Ana winds, hurricane-level winds, it is not only not effective to fly our aircraft, the water, the retardant they drop dissipates before it even hits the ground, but it's also not safe for the pilots.
So in the face of dry hydrants and grounded aircraft, how did firefighters adapt?
A water shuttle is one of the things that we'll do, where you have a fire hydrant that does have water, likely at a lower elevation. We'll put a fire engine there that can pump water up a bit higher to even another fire engine, and as many as we need to shuttle that water up to the location where the problem is. The other tactic is bringing in a water tender. So that's a large apparatus that can bring up a water to the location where we're trying to fight. And the third option is something like drafting out of a swimming pool, where we have pumps that we could put into a swimming pool and we could augment the pressure to be able to fight fire.
The LA Department of Water and Power, DWP, says it quadrupled the water flow to the area and summoned 15 water tankers to directly refill fire trucks. Looking forward, the fires will also cause new problems for LA's already strained system. Officials are warning residents not to drink tap water for fear water systems are being contaminated. Think melted PVC pipes, waste backflowing into damaged lines, and toxins from ash and flame retardants entering reservoirs and aqueducts.
I know I talked back to back, but so I was amazed by the water tankers, and then when they said not to drink water from the faucets or anything because it could be contaminated, it's like Flint, Michigan, right? They were having issues with their pipes as well. So
it's a problem that's happened after several other major California fires.
Wow. The issues arise that with it, right?
As immediate danger calms, there's a hunt for who to blame, and misinformation has run wild. The federal
It's crazy that, I'm sorry, like, this home is kind of touched, this home kind of touched, burned. I mean, maybe not touched. I said kind of touched, but maybe not. It's touched in the back, not in the front. Barely unscathed. Like, it hit and miss areas and areas and areas. What?
Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, has reactivated its rumor response site to fight false claims, and LA Fire has directly responded to inaccurate social media posts.
It's inappropriately damaging, it's inaccurate, it's misleading to the public, and it doesn't help develop appropriate responses for dealing with these crises.
President Trump, for instance, said water ran out in LA because of policies meant to protect an endangered fish. On his first day back in office, he signed an executive order titled Putting People Over Fish, Stopping Radical Environmentalism to provide water to Southern California. And after visiting LA, signed another directing federal officials to find ways to override disastrous California water policies. Trump has blamed Newsom for policies that diverted water to protect a tiny fish called the Delta smelt. Did that have any impact on fire fighting efforts?
It's just simply false. It's nonsense. Again, there's lots of conversations about California water policy and how we allocate water to protect fish or ecosystems versus deliver water to different kinds of users. But that had no role whatsoever to play in water availability for firefighting.
It's misinformation about how if we just had more water from Northern California in Southern California, that would have made the difference. That's not true because, again, even if you have water stored fairly close by in the region, you can't just move it quickly up to an area like the Palisades.
Billionaires Linda and Stuart Resnick are also not to blame. The owners of the Wonderful Company and its brands like Palm and Fiji Water have sprawling farmlands in the San Joaquin Valley to grow pistachios, oranges, and pomegranates. They've been the subject of anti-Semitic attacks on social media, falsely accusing them of hoarding.
Claims about a billionaire couple hurting efforts to fight the LA fires via their control of the water supply are false. But if they're using this, like, not the same amount, but if they're under control of the government in LA, then technically what are people getting on their case for, right? They're still paying their dues. They have no control over how much water they're getting. If they don't pay their bill one time, right, or a continuous times, then they get shut off.
Water because of their investment in a public-private water bank that's 100 miles north of LA and has no connection to its water supply.
No connection between the two. This is a localized problem of infrastructure and the scale and scope of this unprecedented confluence of events.
The fires have also resurfaced criticism around state and local water decisions, from taking down dams to not building enough reservoirs. The real culprit? Before the fires, LA had seen close to zero rain since May.
2024 was the hottest year on record for the entire planet. Higher temperatures means more demand for water by soils and vegetation and people and agriculture, and that certainly was influenced also by climate change.
The hard truth is, water failure could happen anywhere that's faced with fighting so many fires at once, and it has.
Oakland had a massive wildfire in the hills in the 1990s.
The water pressure was not up to the task of stopping what became a firestorm.
Thousands of homes were destroyed. Similar problems were encountered.
In Ventura County, hydrants ran dry during two fires less than a year apart that each burned more than 1,000 homes. The Thomas Fire in 2017 and the Woolsey Fire in 2018.
A firefight of this size, such an urban conflagration, any system is going to have its challenges in maintaining water pressure.
And fire events of this magnitude are getting more likely to happen beyond California, too.
We have wildfires in the east. There are wildfires all across Canada and other parts of Europe and in Russia. These kinds of disasters are not California problems. They're increasingly everywhere problems.
It's an everywhere problem,
Even if you do not believe you live in a wildfire-prone area, you have to be prepared. Having a wildfire action plan, taking steps to harden your home against wildfires, maintaining defensible space, in particular that first 5 feet around the home.
As population booms, more and more people, and some 45 million residences, are moving to what's known as the wildland-urban interface, high fire risk transitional areas between dense development and wildlands.
They do know,
and while
right?
California is home to the top 6 cities at highest risk, cities in Texas, Colorado, and Oregon are in the top 15. Last February saw the largest fire in Texas's history. January's LA fires burned the largest urban area in California in at least 40 years. Both these blazes happened in winter, far outside the traditional wildfire season.
The wildfire season is getting longer and longer. Some people say there's no wildfire season anymore. It's all year round.
It's all year round, yeah.
All this begs the question, could any water system handle a blaze that moves so fast?
We don't have any municipal
Not
water
yet.
systems that can supply hundreds of hydrants all at the same time. Period. That doesn't exist. I've been on several fires myself, some in that almost exact same area where we've lost water.
They don't have it yet, but I think we
Still,
have the
there are
technology
solutions
to
that can
do
help.
it. We just don't
One
want
was
to.
invented by retired LA County Battalion Chief Mark Whaling.
We tell the helicopter pilots, go find some water someplace. What are we thinking? When we can put it all around the city and make it a permanent static source that is completely dependable.
This is CAL FIRE 903 doing a little training on the heli hydrant in Fallbrook.
Whaling's heli hydrant is an automatically refilling open tank reserved for helicopters to dip from in high fire risk areas to reduce the length of flight times between water pickups and drops.
The purchase of the tank starts at like $70,000 for the basic system, and you can either buy more helicopters or put water sources closer, and anybody can guess which one's less expensive.
Yorba Linda was first to install one in 2019, followed by another in 2021. John DeCrescio was Water District Operations Manager there at the time.
That one was used to knock down a fire in Chino Hills State Park. They kept it to 5 acres.
Wow.
So they were able to get on it and knock it down real quick.
Quick, yeah.
Most people never even heard about that fire. But it was heading right towards our homes again.
So they stopped
After
before
the
it
Freeway
got
Complex
big.
fire, we wanted to do better for our community.
The 2008 Freeway Complex fire in Yorba Linda burned 280 homes and damaged pumps, so they couldn't supply water to hydrants. Afterward, the district also added a long-planned underground reservoir that relies on gravity, not pumps, to get water to homes and hydrants.
And there's like 3 elements of how you could make water systems more resilient toward wildfire. There's the raw water, there's the local infrastructure, and then there's the power.
Yorba Linda also added backup generators at pump stations following the Freeway Complex fire. Similar plans were put in place in Ventura County after hydrants ran dry in the Thomas and Woolsey fires. But San Francisco serves as the best example of a comprehensive solution.
Hundreds of structures fell before the fiery blast of the Holocaust that swept through the ruins of the once thriving metropolis.
The city was almost completely destroyed in the 1906 earthquake and resulting fire, which also
Wait,
caused
isn't
most
that where they
hydrant
had the biggest earthquake recorded? Or one of the biggest earthquakes recorded?
to run dry. A few years later, it developed a unique fire suppression water system, totally separate from the rest of the city's water. Seawater enters the system from 52 suction connections along the
I guess
waterfront,
filtered, right?
and it's pumped in from fireboats and 2 high-pressure pumping stations. There's more than 200 underground cisterns to store backup water, and gate valves to isolate damaged sections of the 135-mile pipeline, a high-elevation reservoir, and 2 large-capacity tanks
So they
use
have a
gravity,
system.
not pumps, to feed special high-pressure emergency hydrants that can be seen around the city with black, red, and blue tops.
Some places have separated out parts of their systems, but the reason it's not done is expense.
At the individual level, there are options like fire retardant gel that you can spread around your home before evacuating. And some Palisades residents say their homes were saved using a generator-powered pump that doused their properties with water from their pools. There's also much more high-tech and expensive approaches. A company called Rain is working on autonomous unmanned aircraft for dropping water on fires. In Japan, an autonomous system of 60-plus water cannons protects a cultural heritage site with 200-year-old thatched roof houses.
Wow.
There's a lot of ideas out there, but really scrutinize them before we invest in them because some of them will work, and if we try to do everything, the price tag of that is
Goes up.
staggering.
There's always this delicate balance of being afraid to go to your customers and raise their rates. But if you don't raise their rates, you can't do these extra things. It's the kind of thing that keeps you up at night when you manage one of these agencies.
As for whether water customers in the areas burned in the Palisades fire will be willing to pay for big solutions as the
I don't
rebuild
think they will.
begins,
Absolutely. I mean,
Oh, really?
they're
Wow.
all neighborhoods where people know their neighbors.
I didn't
and
think
help
they would
each
be
other
willing to pay for
and
it.
work together. So I
Oh,
think if
that's one
we
person.
would all band together to support that if it meant saving our community.
Oh. Just because she said it doesn't mean everyone else will say it, but it's just weird that you think because it costs a lot, people would be going, well, in the long run it could work, but how long till it's the next fire and it's not even built in yet? So, I mean, we'll find out to see if they actually do it. If they even plan to, it's a wait and see situation.